Hi, I'm Anya Samek. I'm an associate professor of strategy and economics at the Rady School of Management at UCSD. And today I'm talking to Ayelet Gneezy, who's also a professor at UCSD in behavioral science and marketing. And we'll be talking about an issue that many of us know well, which is procrastination. So I've done some work on procrastination as well, in particular in the context of health insurance choice. In my research, we see people procrastinate up until the very last day to make their health insurance decision, sometimes missing it altogether. And in fact, I missed the deadline this year and had to beg the university to let me enroll in health insurance the day after the deadline. Thankfully, it was successful. But I'm going to talk today with Ayelet about her work in this area and how we can encourage people to procrastinate less. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um, We're talking today about your paper also on health-related choice, and it's on the effect of deadlines on cancer screening completion. So you want to tell me a bit about what motivated the idea and how you started?
Sure. My interest in colon cancer research or related to how to increase uptake was actually came in the form of an email from a physician at UCSD, Dr. Gupta, who by mistake thought I was a behavioral economist and asked for my advice, to which I responded with, I'm not an economist, but I'm happy to try and give an advice. And we met. And he shared a story about a study that they were running. And in that study, they were trying to increase the uptake of colorectal cancer screening. And the way they did it was they would send individuals, and these are all individuals that were underserved and uninsured, both in tech and only in Texas. And they would send them a mailer, a physical mailer, and the physical mailer had in it a letter and a kit. So the kit is essentially a kit to collect your poop and mail it back. It was had all the instructions. It was with a step already, so it was paid. Um, and what they did in order to try and increase uptake is they gave some people a $10 incentives to complete it, and some people $20 to complete it, and then other people received nothing. So that was their control. And this was he approached me at the end of the first year of the study. The study was planned to go for 3 years. So seeing what happens over time with the incentives, if people respond more or less and there's no change, and for another following 1 year following that, just to see what happens when you withdraw the incentives. And the reason he approached me was because there was no difference between any of the arms or conditions. So $20, $10, or no dollars, no incentive. Uptake was very, very low. And he was trying to figure out why. So my first inclination was, of course, I know what to do because, of course. So I suggested, and I said something that there's something about when you give people something for free, right? You send them this kit for free. Maybe they don't value it as much, right? So maybe they should know what the value is, right? So they didn't want to charge them because those are really very poor people. But the idea was maybe we can highlight, kind of mention that the alternative cost of that, right, would be whatever it is. Now, the whatever it is was actually tricky because when I asked him what the cost of the test is, he said, well, it depends. And apparently, you can, depending on what you integrate into the formula or include in the formula, it can be anywhere from like $10 to $1,000. So sort of kind of,
So
um,
just to back up, this is underprivileged people who normally wouldn't get tested. And this cancer screening is pretty important for
yeah,
preventing death. And there's not a big response rate, potentially because you're being asked to send your poop in the mail.
that's one possible reason. So they are uninsured. The majority, and that's something I learned later, are Hispanic. And there's a relatively small group of, there I cannot remember the percentages of African Americans. And all of 50 years and above. And the letter that kind of is included with the mailer also says that they receive it because people above the age and whatnot, and then it explains about the risks and how early detection is really important. To your point about maybe because it's you have to poop and it's kind of yucky. Um, that could be one reason, but we really don't know, right? I mean, we really didn't know what the reason is. I uh, naively, which shouldn't have been the case, thought I had it sort of figured out, right? So I didn't think I'm going to solve the problem, but I thought I nailed it at least a bit when I thought about, having them know what the value, increasing the perceived value of the kit. Um, as a side note, what I suggested to do didn't work. Okay, so this was another study that an RCT randomized control trial that
So
failed.
you've now told them why it's important. You've given them information about what it's worth, and still the rates were pretty low.
Right. So we said, well, it's valued at $200. And to some people we didn't mention it. And we also mentioned why you're getting it. And the mailer I didn't mention, the mailer came from it's the Safety Health Network that we worked with. This is someone they are familiar with. So this is a health safety network that they are enrolled in, right? So it's not like coming out of like whatever. Um, I will say that so after the second study failed, um, we asked them if they have any information, any data that maybe they kind of gathered throughout the trials and studies that will help us kind of shed a bit of kind of light on what may be the causes that people don't complete it. Uh, Nothing was we didn't have the numbers, but there were anecdotes, right? So it's not like a study, but anecdotes. So some anecdotes highlighted, for example, that African Americans greatly distrust the system. Whatever the system is, they're just unwilling to play along. The Hispanic population, which was the majority actually, many of them are undocumented. And their fear was that they wanted to have as little interactions with anything, right? That can suggest or can track down back to them. Um, Beyond that, nothing much. We didn't really get any sense. We were planning on doing, let's call it a focus group. I'm not a big on focus groups, but that's what it boiled down to until the cost of doing so became apparent, and the primary investigator, who was a physician in Texas, decided against it. But I will tell you one thing that we thought about, and it won't be something new to you, but so if you think about this intervention, right? So sending a mailer. So what we do know is that we send the mailer, and then we know if someone returned the test. And there's like many, many steps along the way that we don't know if they received the letter. We don't know if they opened it. We don't know if they read it, if they trusted it, if they understood it, if they intended to complete the test. All of those are complete unknowns. And I don't have great insights or ideas on how we can actually get to each of those. Of course, we can go and ask them which of those, where did the process stop for you? I don't know necessarily that people remember and can reflect accurately on that. But it just goes to show that there are so many things that can happen along the way that for us, from an outcome perspective, will all look the same. We will not know which of those is driving it. Disgust was definitely part of it. Taboo, sort of, not taboo like, murder, but, things that you don't do in some cultures. If I remember correctly from the data, women are more likely to complete the test. I would just, as a general. Anyway, so we were left kind of puzzled and not knowing what to do next now that, the exploratory phase was canceled. And I don't even remember how, so one thought that came to mind, the first thought that came to mind was if you're thinking about $10 as an incentive and $20 as an incentive, maybe it was 5 and 10, I can't remember, but let's say it was 10 and 20. One thought was, well, if I'm getting $10 and you, Anya, you're getting $20, each of those, right? So each of those I evaluate $10 and you evaluate $20, right? If the $20 knew that someone else is getting $10, or the alternative, right, to getting 20 is 10, maybe they would value, maybe it will incentivize them more than it does in isolation. So then, and I don't know, I can't remember how we came to the idea of doing that. We said, let's do the following. We said, let's give uh, some people get no incentive. Then some people receive what we call exploding incentives or decreasing incentives. And the idea is that we tell them, if you complete, here's a kit. If you return it within a week, you get $20. If you return it within 3 weeks, you get $10. And then this was one arm. And then there was a similar arm, only the higher incentives were the $10, right? So, and then the lower incentives was, the decreased one was $5. So that gave us kind of an ability to isolate the effect of the absolute value, which we thought wouldn't matter much. And as I'll tell you, it didn't, as opposed to kind of the um, relative incentive. And let's call it generally loss aversion, right? You don't want to lose on $10 or, half of what was promised.
It seems to
Uh,
me like what you're saying is there's all these steps involved. And when someone gets a letter saying, as long as you do all these steps, we'll give you $20, maybe they value $20, but there's just so many steps, they kind of put it off. But the exploding incentive pushed them to take
yeah,
these steps earlier. So even though it was a black box to you where they had dropped off, you knew they had dropped off somewhere, and this was a way to kind of bring them back.
just the fear or not wanting to lose on that. And we had another arm in which there were no incentives. Two other arms. One in which we told people you have 1 week to return it, and another one in which we told people you have 3 weeks to return it. Um, which essentially no incentives, just kind of a deadline. And that kind of links back to your introduction about procrastination. So I have my first ever published paper was on procrastination, actually, of enjoyable experiences, or not aversive, too aversive experiences, um, because that has been shown by others, many others before us. One of the not data studies, but data that we used was data from health insurance signups at UCLA for the year of whatever, 2017 maybe, and from the same year from the Museum of Contemporary Art in San Diego. And what you used for that were visits to the museum when there was an exhibit that was limited in time, right? So there's an exhibit that comes for like whatever, 1 month or 2 months, right? And essentially we saw, if you think about the health sign up, right? Health insurance sign-ups as a not great experience, like more maybe aversive experience, and going to the museum to someone you want to see as an enjoyable experience. For both of those, we see the exact same pattern, which is there's a spike at day 1, 2, 3, whatever. Then they are dead throughout the period, and then there's a spike just before the deadline. So with unenjoyable experiences, people behave just the same. And that's how we came about, kind of the idea to use deadlines came about. And you worked with the companies and organizations and whatnot. I did too for charitable giving also. And there's this inclination to give people a lot of time to respond. They don't, right? If I receive a solicitation to donate money and I didn't donate in the first, I didn't send back, or I didn't go online, or whatever, and donated in the first, I don't know, few days, the likelihood that I will go back to that 10 days later, 2 weeks later, a month later, and do it, just not there. It's just not there. So if anything, of course, in a reasonable manner, I think we should limit, right? Kind of the time frame in which people can act. Anyway, so that was a design. We continued data when we said you have to return it within, a week or 3 weeks. We didn't say that you cannot send it after that, but we said that that was kind of the expectation that we set. We continued collecting data a full year after, the study was over, like the deadline was over. Unsurprisingly, nothing changed during that period of time. Results?
What
Results of question.
what did you expect to find?
I'm asking if you prefer that I tell the results or if you have any question.
To have a question. Um,
No.
I think it's interesting because on the museum is kind of is a positive experience that you might procrastinate, and then the health insurance decision or the colorectal screening is a negative experience. So did you expect those to have a different result from the shortened window, or does it not matter? Do people procrastinate both kinds of things?
Oh, we thought it would be more or less the same. Before we got the data from the museum and the health insurance sign-ups, we ran some studies. We ran one study with a coffee shop in La Jolla and another one with AMC Theater in Fashion Valley. And in both of those, in one it was gift cards that we get. I can't even remember who were the people we gave the gift cards to the theater to. I need to take a look in the paper. It was many years ago. But I do remember the coffee shop actually very well studied. There was a French cafe at Bird Rock. And we randomized, we gave, I think it was Rady students at the time. We gave some students a gift card for a pastry and cafe, like for free. And it had a 1 week time, the deadline expiration date, and others got it for 3 weeks. I'm almost certain these were the day, like time frames. The other one had a 3 week expiration date. And surely enough, we saw a greater redemption and earlier redemption when it was 1 week versus 3 weeks. And essentially the same effect with the theater. So by that point, it was pretty clear. By the way, and the mechanism is essentially, or kind of the reason why people do that, what kind of drives this effect, is both for the so we in talking in terms of studies and things that we measured, we are unable to measure it for the health insurance sign up and for the museum. But what we found for the positive experiences, the two studies was consistent with what other people before us found for negative or aversive experiences, and that is this notion of time slack, right? So you believe that in the future you will have more time, right? So I really don't have time to go and indulge now in whatever, going to a cafe, but in a week I'll have time, or in 2 weeks I'll have time. Same thing with, right? So the resource slack, so, never mind who found it before, but people found it before us.
This is when I lived in Los Angeles for 5 years. There's a lot of things I didn't do because I lived there. I could get to them anytime.
And that is one of the studies we did, by the way. One of the studies we did, we actually had, we surveyed people in Chicago. Maybe you were in their study. We surveyed people in Chicago and in other places. I can't remember what other cities. Almost certain Dallas was there because my co-author lived in Dallas at the time, and there was a third city. And we asked him a bunch of questions about, we kind of listed a bunch of attractions and sites and asked him which one they visited and when, or slash why. And what we found that I think it was a 5 day visitor to the city has seen more sites and landmarks, whatever, than someone who lives there. And
Wow.
if someone who lives there saw almost as many, or as many as they saw usually just because they're just about to move away or because they're out of town visitors and they went with them, which is a very cool study
That's really interesting.
or
So time
survey.
slack, super important concept. We need to give
Yeah,
people some deadlines.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, and we can talk about takeaways, but I think that is a big takeaway. By the way, I almost had a tattoo done. Maybe I will still do it. Have it done because I'm like scared of pain. And that is to have a tattoo that says "not someday."
Not someday, but
Because someday is not a day, right? It's just, it's just possible.
but you will get the tattoo someday.
Maybe one day.
Not
Yeah,
now.
maybe someday I'll get a
Maybe
tattoo.
someday.
Not someday. But anyway, yeah. So I will tell you the short of the result of the study was that the higher exploding incentives were more incentivizing the smaller ones. So the 20 and 10 were better than 5 and 10, 10 and 5. But that no incentives, just deadlines. So 1 week and 3 weeks. Sorry, the 1 week was as effective as the 2010. So just telling people you have 1 week to return it was as effective as giving them $20 for returning it. That is kind of the synthesized kind of, bottom line, um, which means that we are wasting so much money.
Were you surprised?
Not very surprised. I was not surprised that the 10 and 10 did not matter, right? That actually the value in and of itself doesn't matter, which is a cool effect. But I wasn't surprised that I was like happy with myself, like 10. Um, but I think it came as a big surprise for our collaborators, right? Because they read a lot of papers, and you and I talked about it with a bunch of other people interested in health about those papers a couple of weeks ago that use financial incentives, and it's magical and it always works and it's great, and it's not. I mean, it's just not. It's so more nuanced and more complicated. So I'm working in Singapore. I have collaboration in Singapore in the health domain, and apparently anyone who runs a study there, uh, many of the studies, not anyone, but many of the studies that they run at the university we work with, they offer people a financial incentive for doing whatever, completing a survey, doing a test, doing a screening, getting vaccinated. Uh, After you get like two or three, four, five, 10 of those, I don't think that it's very attractive anymore. It's like, whatever. If not this one, maybe again procrastination, maybe not, but there'll always be another opportunity. So if you want, by the way, when we're talking about effects, we're talking about 3%, of individuals responding. It's not huge numbers. So what we're left with is just upping how much we offer or getting more sophisticated about it, which is not, I don't think that's what we want to do. I think we want people to do it because they care about their health, and yeah, and they go ahead and do that. Um, and if they don't, then let's use deadlines. The deadlines are magic, right? It's like you don't want to miss out on opportunity, right?
So it's also interesting to me because the different interventions bring in different people. So if you think about, we talked a bit about this earlier, the motivations that people have to return the test or not. You might imagine you pay someone $200 to return the test. Different types of people might take that
Sure.
up than the deadline with no incentive. Like if the deadline with no incentive probably appeals to the people who want the test most, who just would procrastinate otherwise or drop
Yeah.
off. A really big incentive, financial incentive might, let's probably scare off the people who are already distrusting of the system, actually. But it could also pull in people who've gotten even less other preventative care in their life, right? Because
Right.
think about kind of, so I'm curious, I guess it's unclear to me who's the most important to help, but it seems like trying to, if we could really identify everybody's motives, we could do some precision nudges and give everybody the nudge that we think will be the most effective for them.
So the $200 is not scalable, right? No one will
Yeah.
do that, right? Even if it's great, unless you know that the numbers are small, you can actually, fund this, right? Kind of. So that is not very scalable. I think that the very large incentives, right? So like a lottery for $1,000, $5,000, either because, like you said about, distrust or within the with establishment or whatever, or just it sounds like too good to be true, like
Mhm.
fishy or whatnot. So I talked to some people in Singapore also that did research trying to like mammogram screening, like breast cancer screening, and one of the arms was a $5,000 single $5,000 lottery, and it didn't work. And I'm like, I didn't say it, but like, of course it didn't. Like, I mean, I would not believe it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and but I think that you're right. I think oftentimes we give incentives or offer incentives to people that would do it otherwise, which is just a shame. And some other times, right, we offer incentives to people, right? If you think about disgust, right? So say that the reason that people do not send back the test because they really think it's disgusting or it's like embarrassing. $20 will not change that, right? And $50 also will not change that now. $1 million, maybe, if you give me free, for sure, but I don't know. That's not happening either. So, and I think that, and you and I talked about it briefly before. Um, it's better if we know what the barrier is, why people are not doing that. And the barrier can be psychological, emotional, whatever. So the reason I'm not doing that. And it can also be just because I don't have time. So in the case, we can say in the case of, at home poop test, that should not be an issue. But if you think about colonoscopy, that's a big deal, right? And the same people I worked with, they had data, and because of COVID, we never got to do the study. But so imagine that you have those same people which are underinsured, not insured and underserved, and let's say that whatever, there's one of them, right? And that one, the poop test comes positive, meaning most likely, very high likelihood that they have cancer. I can't remember, but I think the accuracy of the poop test I think it's about 95% accuracy. It's highly accurate. So they call these people, or they reach out to them and they say, okay, so bad news or concerning news, we need you to come in. And the majority don't come in for a colonoscopy. Essentially,
Even
you're telling
after.
them, yeah, and you're telling them, like, not maybe, like very, very, very likely that you have cancer. Come in, and they don't come. So you have to ask why, right? And we think, and we did some preliminary, interviews and whatnot. Part of it is that they don't have time. They cannot afford losing a full day of work. Some of them cannot afford getting, the money getting to the clinic. And others are just, what if? Like, say I have cancer. Then what? For them, I mean, they cannot stop working. They cannot afford treatment, right? Knowing that doesn't really going to make a difference, right, about their prospects. So they'd rather just, continue as is, which is something you and I and all the people designing all these incentives just cannot fathom. We cannot begin to think that way. Yeah. So yeah. And it's not a paternalism or whatnot, it's just that we are ignorant about it. And we have to become better at understanding what we're dealing with before, trying to be almighty and smart and yeah, solving the world.
I think that's super important. I've worked a lot in Chicago area schools and low-income neighborhoods and interacted with a lot of parents and kids, and it really gives you some perspective on different people's lives and what their motives are. And then we go to these academic seminars, and there's people there that are just coming up with a theory, without ever having to talk to the
Right.
people. So I think really talking to people and understanding where they're coming from is really important. But this time
And tell it,
slack, hmm?
no, I just want to say, and referring to them as irrational, like
Not so
irrational
good.
maybe to us, from our perspective, not irrational at all from their perspective. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Back to you.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. But I think this time slack idea that you're talking about, where we just anticipate having more time in the future, and that's partly why we procrastinate, that seems to just hold across all socioeconomic status. So rich
Yeah.
people, poor people, the people
Yeah.
going to the museum, I assume, are higher income, the people getting in this
It is.
colonoscopy screening program, lower income. Do you
Yeah.
have any policy recommendations for colonoscopies generally? I'm sure lots of people don't get those on time either.
For colonoscopies or for poop tests? Colonoscopies, well, first of all, don't make me drink that disgusting thing in the prep. Apparently, there's a cheaper, and not cheaper, more expensive way to do it, which is there's a pill. I think it's a single pill,
Hmm.
few pills that you swallow, and you take and you have to drink a lot of water, which I will do gladly. And so that is number one. And
So make it more pleasant.
yeah, so to me the preparation is much worse than because the procedure itself. You either don't remember it. I don't know how they put you down, but kind of what they use if it's not remembering or not feeling during. But that's never unpleasant, right? And I don't remember it being as unpleasant. Um, I don't see how, I don't have a good idea how. So the only thing, if it's for someone, it depends, right? If it's for, by the way, underlying everything we said about why people won't do that is I'm asymptomatic. If I'm asymptomatic, why should I? So maybe, I don't know. So maybe for getting more people to do that is that say if we talk about only people age 50 and up, although I heard that they're trying to decrease the age now to 45, but I didn't read about it, I just heard. Now, let's say 50 and up. If you go to the doctor and you complain about anything about your digestion, first thing, send you to the colonoscopy. So do it in a context where it's relevant, right? If you come to me and you say, oh, you're 50, how about we put a camera inside you and take a photo? I'm like, I don't think I need that. But if you're able somehow to connect it, to kind of, link it to something I'm experiencing, some symptom, not far-fetched, not a headache, but, something with my digestive system, weight loss, weight gain, bloating, whatever it is, then I think people would be more likely to do it. And it's not time slack, but it's timing. But again, it's about context, I think. Yeah.
That's
So
a
maybe
really good
one
point.
way. Yeah,
Yeah. And then it's not like, I think a lot of times people think, okay, well, I'm 50, but this isn't going to happen to me. It might happen to someone else.
of course.
But if you're already having stomach issues,
Something.
then
Yeah.
you're already kind of more alert about the
And you went to the
potential
doctor
problem.
and you kind of
Yeah.
clearly somewhat worried, just, do that and try to do it quickly. So I think and again, I don't know that for sure, but if you contact me and if you tell me I need to have a colonoscopy and it's really, really, really important, and the first appointment I can get is in 3 months, it doesn't feel very important. So maybe people would kind of drop off or kind of give up early on. And I don't know that it is a problem. I know at the time it used to be an issue when we worked with the doctors, there was an issue with scheduling. I don't know if that's common, but better if we can get it done faster, yeah, sooner than later.
Yeah, that also gives you a signal. It's not that serious
Yeah,
if you're going to
yeah.
schedule it 3 months out. Well,
Yeah.
this has been really interesting. Thank you. So we've talked about
Yep.
time slack, health decisions, going to the museum,
Mhm.
procrastination, motivation. This is a lot of really important
All
things.
of it.
We found that incentives aren't the answer all of the time, and they don't always
Sure.
work. There's a lot of other reasons. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you. All righty.